Well, in terms of talking controlled opposition, in my opinion, what we've got going on right now is, I call it Operation Whoops-a-Daisy, whereby we've got a lot of people in the media, people like John Campbell, who isn't a real doctor, Dr. Malhotra, who's a cardiologist, who should keep his mouth shut about anything that doesn't have to do with the heart. He was at a huge talk with Campbell that I went to, and basically, this operation, Whoops-a-Daisy, I believe it to be a social engineering operation through the media to slow release information and manage people's gradual realisation and acceptance of what's happening. Sorry?
You added an MP in that when we had
and
this
Bridgen as well.
Yeah, because I don't know about Malhotra so much, whatever his name is. I not considered the idea that John Campbell could be controlled opposition.
Well, he pushed the jabs massively.
Yeah, but
then
now that's a change of belief, though.
Sure.
I know that my beliefs change very much.
Let me tell you the story. Because, I know why the beliefs shouldn't be changing. I know why the beliefs should have been what mine were. So the thing about Malhotra and Campbell at this big speech was, Malhotra has the informed consent guidelines put behind him. He doesn't say they are the General Medical Council's informed consent guidelines. He just says, these are some ideas about informed consent, and he has 6 behind him. And I've just put all 7 of the General Medical Council's informed consent guidelines in a video I've done a month ago.
So you recognise it.
So I know what's missing.
That's what production does for you,
actually. I know what's missing. I know that the number 4, the one that says at the end of it, and the possibility to discuss no action must be taken. And it's also about, discussing the benefits and the risks of the medication that you're about to take. So it's very, very convenient that the one that opens up the can of worms, that every doctor, every medical person should know that the bedrock of the doctor-patient relationship, informed consent, hinges upon discussing what the benefits and the risks are of the medication that you're going to take. Knowing what is in the drug or the product enables you to give informed consent because you're informed yourself. And so if you weren't given the information...
I understand.
No. Yeah. If you weren't given the information in the first place, as a doctor you have absolutely no right to recommend anything to anybody because you have no idea what it is. I shouted out to him, would you recommend a book that you hadn't read? Because he's literally saying to the audience, first off he refuses to apologise when asked to, and then he says, I'm not apologising because I would do now exactly what I did then, having been given the same information. And that's when I turn purple. I'm up there in the gods with my mate, I'm miles away from him, and I shout down to him something along the lines of, you can't recommend anything to anybody if you don't know what the ingredients in it are, because that means you don't know what it is. You can't give informed consent. Would you recommend a book you hadn't read?
Yeah.
And he doesn't respond, he just kind of he stares at me silently and waits for someone else to say something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when all the old women to the side of me start shouting at me and trying to shout me down and stop me from speaking because they're saying, he's here to help now.
Yeah,
and I'm like, if he's here to help, how come he failed us in the first place? Because every doctor's supposed to know you can't say that.
I mean,
so you can't do that kind of thing. You just can't. It's medical ethics went out the window. All of them.
Well, yeah.
All medical ethics went out the window, mate.
It depends what his beliefs are at the moment of the decision making, you see. No, that set of...
His face is also slapped all over the media as the guy telling us what to do. So he's been endorsed and picked by the establishment to be put on the media in those controlled media environments in the first place.
This is who? Mr.
Malhotra.
Okay, well I don't really know him, so I couldn't really say.
Well, you can understand that he's a doctor who doesn't actually pretend. He pretends that he couldn't possibly know about what medical ethics are.
He's anti now, or he's
moderately anti-jab. I mean, he says things like, the rollout needs to be stopped. He's got his sub-story about his dad at the beginning of his speech, about his dad having heart problems and dying, and so that gets a lot of the audience on side and cuts him a lot of slack at the beginning. But I mean, I'm appalled by doctors who recommend something they don't know the ingredients to.
But there's a whole lot of taking things for granted and the way things are done that sort of allowed this situation to cascade into that, and an awful lot of people have been made guilty just by collaborating, because what I mean is I don't know him, so I don't know why I'm defending him, but I could see...
He's an establishment doctor.
Yeah, well, if you are an establishment doctor, that's not to be a villain before this event. Yeah, and there was such a thing as establishment doctors before this event, and they're in a position, and then depending on what they believe...
Do you believe this, what he said? Do you believe this point? He says this. This really pissed me off as well. He said, I couldn't possibly believe that a vaccine could cause harm.
He's trying to... That statement's obviously ludicrous, and we both know it's ludicrous, but he's trying to tell you what his state of belief is, and that's the state of belief from which he's made his decisions. There's all kinds of things, like Jimmy Dore took the vaccine. He's been one of the top rebels.
Jimmy Dore's a nightclub comedian / journalist, a doctor who says, oh yeah, I took the jab and I let my dad took the jab and I backed it and I told everybody else to take it when I had no idea what the hell it was.
I consider them fooled.
They're not just fooled, they're incentivized to be where they are and doing what they're doing, and he was incentivized more than everybody else. He was the propaganda doctor rolled out on all the news channels. He's selected for a reason. He's Harley Street.
You see, you remember when we were talking about eugenics? It produces, because I become an advocate for science and I love science. This is something that people get into emotionally, and then they attach virtue to it, the virtue of science, and then when this science comes and delivers its manna from heaven to save the people, the person who is of that mind just, yes, I will do what science is saying because science is good and here's me doing. And there's only, is this what John Campbell seems like someone to me, is someone who's absolutely horrified with what science has done. But at the beginning he's clearly like, yes, medicine is good, our systems are good, and it's peer reviewed, and this is the way to us. We test and we health and safety and we're good and we're helping people, and then all of a sudden it's like, what is this industry I am in and what the hell has it been doing? But you get the kind of zealotry.
What was it doing? What was it doing? How could they be so naive about their own industry when the opioid crisis exists? And it just gets worse and worse after year, and nobody does anything about it. Nobody tries to stop it.
Different people are watching different information. So you look at that information.
They know about it, though. They're not ignorant. They're not as ignorant as Malhotra pretends. So I couldn't possibly believe that vaccine caused harm, despite the vaccine industry going to Ronald Reagan in '86 and saying we're not a financially viable business model because we're being sued by so many families because we're killing and disabling so many people.
Okay, but then what's the
how could he possibly pretend?
What's the alternative hypothesis? He motivated them to people because I want them to die. What's his motive apart from maybe he just wants people to die? Company paying him to kill people.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's a Malthusian cartoon character, evil person or not.
Who's now suddenly pretending not to be. For the purpose of what?
I can certainly see that he's famous, he's rich, he gets to travel, he's a Harley Street, well educated in the heart anyway. I'll say that much. And so he's a famous rich man now. So if you want to know what he gets out of it, maybe he signed up for this quite some time ago. Maybe this has been his.
Is he like a YouTube
his
doctor?
role for a very no? He's literally not YouTube. He's literally mainstream media, the face that propagandised the nation to take the jab.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Dr. Malhotra, the cardiologist.
Well, he's got to be guilty then, hasn't he? I mean,
Thank you.
Okay.
We got there.
No, I had a different fella in my head. I had that.
He's Asian Malhotra. He's about 40, good-looking, skinny, very posh-speaking, and he was literally on. He was the Channel 4 Sky, BBC. Take the jab. Take it. Take it. I don't know what's in it. You don't know what's in it, but take it.
Okay, no, I'm not defending him. Definitely not.
Campbell's the YouTube guy. He says he's Dr. John Campbell, despite training nurses how to inject people. People were criticising him, saying he's not really a doctor. He certainly... How do you manage to shuffle through the data for 2 years and not notice until Bridgen, Malhotra and Campbell, all uniformity of action, uniformity of time, months apart, start to come around to going, oh, hang on a minute. Lots of people are dying from these things. Hang on a minute, masks don't work. You're telling me Campbell's only just come around in the past couple of months about masks?
Do you know?
It's all in operations coming at the same time, so it's like...
Do you know Amazing Polly? But then she also says that she's not sure about this Dr. John Campbell guy, because basically this Dr. John Campbell guy isn't a conspiracy theorist. This Dr. John Campbell guy is not trying to uncover the plot. What he's doing is what it says in the background, is following the evidence wherever it leads. And as the evidence comes in about COVID, he goes through it like a sort of fairly plain intelligence level school teacher with his pen and paper. Now, she's immediately thought he's one of them because he's kind of mainstream minded and he wants to think that the government's doing the best for us, and he has got a faith in the medical profession. I think you observe the transformation with him over the course of time, where he's now quite thoroughly convinced that what has been done is medical malpractice and something really nasty has been done, whereas before it's a bit like, well, let's see what the results are, and he's quite hopeful that maybe will be a good thing. So he kind of believes in it and then follows the data through. It's how it comes to different people depends. I mean, if you were right dug into Alex Jones, you were sort of like watching the World Economic Forum.
All he had to do was know what a doctor is supposed to, the basic medical ethics. That's all he had to know that everything was wrong about what was happening. That's all he had to know was the General Medical Council guidelines that he's supposed to know all about. That he's probably covered himself at some point, but that he's certainly he's sifting through enough data. I mean, the excess deaths in the yellow card reporting system. He took his time about the yellow card reporting system data, didn't he? He didn't follow the evidence where it led there when the rest of us were. And we're not literally sifting through the data for our living.
So like this is Operation Oops.
Whoopsie daisy! It was just a mistake. I mean, we were all lied to. We all thought it was okay, didn't we? Even the experts like us. And that's what Campbell said to the crowd when people were shouting at me. When someone said, "Well, we knew," he said, "How could you possibly know? You just got lucky." Like, if you can't, how could you say to people that you couldn't possibly know?
John Campbell, the YouTube guy, is on stage with this
Malhotra
television guy.
And he says, you couldn't possibly know, you just got lucky. That's what he said to the crowd. Now, did you think that you're lucky you didn't take the vaccine?
The old bald guy with the glasses.
Yes, Campbell. Do you think you're lucky that you didn't take the vaccine? Or do you think that you had reasons?
What event was this?
The event I've been talking about, like, it was in November, I think.
It's a big public meeting space, and those two people are on stage talking about vaccines.
Well, it was Malhotra for an hour, and then a few people came out. One was a GB News hack, one was Campbell hack, Malhotra, King Doctor hack, and then there was one white guy on there. I didn't know who he was. I can't remember. And he says at one point, I was talking about the informed consent rules, there being 7, not 6. And at one point he goes, "Just go home and look at the informed consent rules on the GMC website." He doesn't say there's one missing behind us. I forgot to mention that because I shouted out twice. There were about 20 outbursts throughout the night. First one after 15 minutes. My outbursts, I was talking about different things, I shouted at him twice. I went purple. My mate was just like, what the hell? Started arguing with the women. And once I explained myself to the old women who were trying to shut me down, once I explained that the rules are very clear, and that if he doesn't have the ingredients now and then, he had no right to recommend them at any point, and he can't repeat the same mistake again and refuse to apologise. He's not going to get away with that in front of me, saying I would do the same thing again without any of the tools I need to make a decision.
And
he's a propagandist 101.
And it throws a whole load of sand in the face of anyone who's thinking of holding anyone to account for any of this sort of mass murder and poisoning, and
it's all a mistake, whoopsie daisy. Nobody could have known, mate, not even the experts.
The plausible deniability is very implausible. But they all seem to be operating on that. I mean, that's why I couldn't see Andrew Bridgen as controlled opposition.